Hello everyone and welcome back, Dace here. So I've got a few questions for everybody to think about while we start exploring today's topic. What was your first STG or bullet hell experience? What went through your mind when you played it or watched someone else play it for the first time? And what was it about the game that struck a chord deep inside? Or perhaps you didn't think much of it until later on. In the past, I've shared bits and pieces of my gaming history and how I got into STGs, but the epic story is scattered amongst previous videos, and I figured it was time to dedicate an episode to my journey. There are a couple of reasons for this. The first is that interest in my story has been expressed, and I'm here to serve, so it's my sworn duty to pass on this riveting tale. It's one man's story of gang involvement, addiction, unspeakable lust, and forbidden love. This is my story of how I went from street crook to celebrity and how one tainted soul on the path to destruction found salvation through STGs. Nah, that's all bullshit. Anyway, the second reason is that the community here continues to grow, and I feel it's only fair to you to know a little more about who you're subscribed to. A huge part of my aim is building genuine connections, and so it only makes sense to create more opportunities like this where we can share experiences and our love for games in the STG and bullet hell genres. Initially, I planned to share my shmup timeline and not delve into my other gaming experiences, but as I sat with the idea, I realized that sharing the entire journey would paint more of a well-rounded picture. With that out of the way, let's get into this. I grew up with 4 siblings. We got a Nintendo Entertainment System in the early to mid-90s, and we had classics like the Mario titles, Tetris, Marble Madness, Cobra Triangle, etc. I certainly enjoyed playing these games, but I didn't feel a major spark for gaming until Mega Man made his way into our home. There was something so cool about a futuristic robot battling his way through incredibly creative levels to face evil bosses. It was during those early years that I developed a deep-rooted passion for science fiction. To this day, I still play the classic Mega Man games every once in a while, and one of my all-time favorite levels is Top Man's stage in Mega Man 3. I just love the greenhouse-style level with glass surfaces everywhere and plants all over, robots busy working away and guarding things. It's stellar. That being said, the Nintendo was of course a shared system in the living room. There were always others around, and the gaming experience was sometimes interrupted. I was in grade 5 at the time, and my close friend GT showed me his Game Boy while hanging out one afternoon. I had never heard of or seen a Game Boy before, but was immediately pulled in. Here was a system I could take anywhere at all. I wasn't limited to whatever room had the TV. This was mind-blowing to me. I could sink into a corner of the basement or burrow into the couch on a rainy day and immerse myself in fantastic adventures. It was like my own little dimensional pocket of intrigue and excitement. It wasn't too long after that another friend of mine happened to be selling his Game Boy with a single game, Solar Striker. I saw this as my big chance and expressed my interest immediately. I didn't have any cash on me, but we agreed on $10. I ran home, told my mother about the exchange, and she was willing to drive me back so that I could pay my friend and get the goods. When we arrived, and to my utter dismay, he wasn't home. His mother said that he had stepped out for a while and she wasn't sure where the Game Boy was or when he'd be back. We went home empty-handed, and I remember feeling so let down over the experience. I slept later that afternoon, and when I awoke, I experienced a major surprise. My mother handed me the Game Boy and Solar Striker. She had gone to my friend's place while I slept and had somehow managed to retrieve the items. And let me tell you, faith in humanity was restored that day, my friends. Anyway, Solar Striker just happened to be my first shmup. It was initially published in Japan on January 26, 1990. At the time, I had no awareness of the genre. As a kid, it was just a game where you control a spaceship and shot down enemies. I remember playing a ton of it, but never made it beyond the stage 4 boss. This was clearly due to being young and inexperienced, and I eventually moved on to other games. Growing up, I played all sorts like Red Alert, Heroes of Might and Magic, Myst, Riven, etc. But in my teen years, I developed a significant interest in RPGs and barely touched anything else. The only exception, of course, was anything I had collected for my Nintendo handhelds. I had Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, GBA, SP, and Nintendo DS, but never really got into the DS. I had a reasonably sized collection of 60 plus games spanning those handhelds. Some of my favorites which I still play are The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, Wario Land 3, Dragon Warrior Monsters, Mole Mania, Kirby games, the list goes on. But back to RPGs, the reason I fell so deeply into these games was simple. They were in-depth stories with all sorts of plot twists and intricacies. They were a portal into other worlds. I could journey with fascinating characters, uncover endless secrets tucked away for only me to find, and listen to incredible music and sounds along the way. To me, RPGs were such an enriching experience. Though shmups have become my all-consuming passion in terms of genres, RPGs will forever be the closest second to that. I could technically get into why I love STGs and bullet hells, but that entirely deserves its own video. Anyway, around 2015 I stopped all gaming for about 2 years, and to be honest, the last system I had even purchased was PlayStation 2. With the release of the Switch, I developed an interest in gaming again. I was intrigued by the idea of getting a handheld and saw that Celeste was coming out. I'd played the Pico 8 version on the laptop at one point and was stoked for a modern take. Breath of the Wild was my first Switch game, and my first time experiencing open world gameplay. Not very shocking when you disconnect from the gaming world for 17 years straight. In any event, I got into all sorts of Switch games and loved the first year's journey. In early 2018, I saw an announcement trailer for Steriden Binary Stars. I still had no clue what shmups were. I hadn't yet heard or seen the term used anywhere, in fact. But I loved the game's rogue-inspired elements and was stoked to purchase it when it came out. Autumn and I were about to leave for a 2-month trip to Nepal. We would be living up in the mountains and I wasn't taking my Switch with me. During the trip, I totally forgot about Steriden, and it was only when we got back that I checked my wish list and remembered how stoked I had been for it. I snagged it immediately and went all in. I was still inexperienced with games like this because I hadn't touched a single STG since Solar Striker way back in the day. Steriden was challenging, but eventually I began conquering my runs. After considerable time invested in Steriden, my curiosity led me to search for similar games, and this is when I became aware of the genre and the bullet hell subgenre. My next purchase was Danmaku Unlimited 3, and at the time that game opened my eyes to true challenge. It was far beyond anything Steriden had thrown at me, and I could never have imagined anything so intense. Once again, I went all in, loving every moment of the immense difficulty DU3 unleashed upon me. From there, I began lapping up shmups whenever I stumbled upon them on the eShop. I began noticing the inner drive to challenge myself and conquer these types of games more and more. Sure, there were times I didn't touch them for a while, but each time I returned to them or found a new one, the phase lasted longer and longer, and the time between shmups became ever smaller as I integrated myself more and more. My original YouTube channel, Stonebeak Productions, began flooding with shmup videos, and I soon realized they deserved their own place to shine. I created Shmuptopia to serve as that place. The channel was also a great way to spread awareness and my enthusiasm to others because I knew shmups were incredibly niche compared to most other game genres. The more I played STGs, the more invested I became. The more titles I checked out, the greater my passion for the genre grew. To be honest, there really isn't a ton to say because we're more or less caught up. It's been an awesome and rewarding experience so far. There have been significant challenges to overcome, I've gained a lot of experience, yet I still feel as though I'm just getting started. I seldom play other types of games these days because STGs call to me so strongly. When I do though, it's usually something laid back or because I have just finished pulling off some crazy grind for weeks on end and want a brief rest before diving back in. A couple of recent examples are Garden Story and Eastward. I haven't finished Eastward yet, but I blasted my way through Garden Story and loved every moment of it. Other titles I've thoroughly enjoyed this year were Crosscode, Into the Breach, Crawlco Block Knockers, Monster Sanctuary, Subnautica, and Subnautica Below Zero, Fez, Scourgebringer, etc. But before this becomes too lengthy of a ramble, let's leave things off there for now. I definitely want to thank everyone who has listened to the end and encourage you to share a bit about your own experience in the comments. I'd love to know when you got into gaming and more specifically STGs. I'd love to hear what some of your favorites have been or games that left an impression way back in the day or even recently. If you enjoyed this video, please consider flinging a like my way and subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming Shmup ASMR episodes. I greatly appreciate the support either way. That being said, thanks again everybody, and we'll see you next time.